Okay, welcome back to Kimbo's Crafts. I'm Kimbo and this is my channel where I go over all things crafts. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, so I welcome you back if you've been with me for a while and been waiting. I've been going through a lot of changes here at my house, and so it just seemed better to focus on that as a priority. But I'm hoping to get back to it. So here I am. And I want to share with you a fun little project that I have literally been working on for decades. And I recently decided to look more into it because I just kind of find it fascinating. And it seems to be less popular, but more easily pick upable, I guess, if that's a way of a word, in the fiber arts kind of craft space. And that is, well, it's got many different names actually. I think I've heard huck is probably the most strange word I've heard for it, but it's huck cloth weaving, huck cloth embroidery, Swedish weaving, Swedish embroidery. It's got so many different names for it. Nobody seems to be able to agree on it. I do have this book that taught me how to do it, and it's called Monk's Cloth Afghans. And it's actually printed in 2000, and it has a little foreword in here explaining how it's called many different things such as Swedish weaving. But it's not truly weaving because the cloth that you use is already woven. You're really more of embellishing it. And it's not truly embroidery either because you're not puncturing or fully going through the weaving or the fabric to make this. So it kind of falls outside of definitions, and it seems like nobody, even to this day, has a really good word for it. So I just thought I would share it with you, go over some things about it, whatever you might know about it, or how you might have heard about it. It's Monk's Cloth Afghan, Swedish weaving, huck cloth embroidery, however you want to name it. It is a embellishment on a woven product. Now, from the history I was able to look back on, nobody can really tell when exactly it started, but we have archaeological or vintage items that we can date back to the 1600s at least, and it's not definitively known if it's from Sweden specifically, but those 1600s items are Swedish, so that seems to be part of it. But it seems also to be kind of like a Scandinavian widespread hobby craft that was brought over here into the Americas and became popular during the 30s, 40s, and 50s because it was a low-cost way to really, freshen up and make pretty towels. And most often it was used historically to do towels and placemats. So that's just a really quick rundown. One of the reasons it's called huck cloth, embroidery, or weaving, no, I keep saying huck. It is huck cloth. Okay, anyway, so one of the reasons it's called huck cloth is because the cloth that was traditionally used was this linen cloth that was woven. It's not really popular or available nowadays, so nowadays we use monk's cloth. And monk's cloth is really helpful for it because it's made with 4 threads going horizontally within 4 threads going vertically, warps and wefts, and those 4 threads are loosely woven so you can get up and under them pretty easily. You can do this with Aida or any other cloth. The important aspect to it is that you're not puncturing or going through the cloth. You're going across the cloth in and out of the top layer overlaying threads. So I'll go ahead and show you that. And the key thing to that is what you end up with is this back of the cloth that's not punctured. So I think theoretically you could do both sides, make an extra thick one and run the design on both sides. But the key thing is it's only one-sided. So here we go. This is, okay, another fun fact. This is a project I've been working on for 2 decades. This book was printed in 2000, and I know I started this, I don't want to date myself too much, but I was definitely in high school. So this is at least 20 years old, and I'll explain why it's taken me a while to get it finished. I've been in and out of working on it, those sorts of things. So what I have here is a sample section of it. It's actually a very large Afghan. So the reason it's a monk's cloth Afghan is because you get a cut of monk's cloth, the size of an Afghan, and then you start your design. And I'll give some tips. One reason why I haven't finished it, I decided to do mine lengthwise because in my younger brain, I thought it would be more efficient to do each thread lengthwise and then cover more ground each pass. In hindsight, it makes it very tedious and difficult to deal with that much thread at a time or yarn. So I really slowed myself down. So I would suggest if you ever pick this up to just work your design horizontally like everybody else instead of vertically and very long, because you just get into that tedium of having way too long of thread. So you can find patterns online. I've been able to find some on Pinterest lately, for instance. You can also find this book. It's still available in thrift stores, used bookstores, those sorts of things. And it teaches you the very simple mechanics. And basically, because you're just sliding it along, there's only so many stitches. There's the straight stitch, which is just going in and out straight across. You got your slant stitch, which is basically what mine is entirely made of. And that is where you go through, then you backtrack up one, and then through the next one. And that's how you get this Z shape. And then there's obviously the slant stitch down. And then when it comes to making these figure 8 or V-stitch peaks, the only difference between it, the only tricky part, I guess, between it and the slant stitch is that you're spreading the, this is probably better, you're spreading the 4 threads in half so you can get that tight V shape. But otherwise, that's it. As far as embroidery goes, there's only, what is that, 4 stitches. And 2 of them are just up and down. So really there's like about 3 stitches. So it's incredibly easily approachable. There's not very complicated stitches or techniques involved to get a really beautiful effect. Now, another key thing to keep in mind, some tips and tricks if you're going to go ahead and pick this up, is to, let me get my thread here, start in the center. In fact, according to the book, you should always start in the center because then you can keep tension across the way. If you go with one thread all the way across, you'll end up having differing tensions. So it's important to start from the center so you can have a consistent tension. And also, my personal experience having this incredibly long stretch of yarn every pass, it's so much easier to only deal with half of that. So also it's just pulling it through, keeping the tension, all of that can take so much time. And so when there's shorter thread, it's just much quicker. So I marked my dead center part of my fabric with this very nice piece of yarn. It's been there now forever. And that's just my starting point for every pass that I go up and down and across. So then it gets to the actual stitching technique. Okay, so this is a little difficult because the way I have the fabric laid out on the table. I do suggest if you're going to do this at home, because it is something that's going to take hours, a lot more time than you could imagine, I do suggest just putting a pillow on your lap, sitting in front of the TV and enjoying a show. And the pillow is important because it gives that kind of relief to the stitches, the threads, so that you don't end up bunching them too much. It's a little hard to get the correct tension because the threads are so slack and the monk's cloth is just so loose. It's very important to kind of keep them laid out as nicely as possible because they bunch really easy. And here's a stitch that I actually started. So I'll just pull through so you can see. Again, if you do this on a placemat or horizontally, your stitches do not take this long to pull the threads through. So that's just something to keep in mind. So this is the slant stitch up, which mine is worked in slant stitches up and then down, and just the occasional V stitches, which are honestly the hardest. So when you do a slant stitch, you have your ending stitch from the bottom one. You skip. So I only count the, how do I put this? The threads that I'm going under. It helps me keep track. And it's probably a little hard to see, but so I go up to the next vertical that I could slip under. Here so you can see it. I'm going to skip that one and go to the next one. That way I get the dramatic V, because this is where that crossover is going to happen. So I go up to the corresponding second one up from where I stopped. I go under 2 of them. And then I like to hold that thread here to the left of the stitch so I don't end up pulling it too tight and bunching the first one. This is just a technique I've come up with after doing, I don't even know how many hours. And honestly, I will say, I think I can crochet an Afghan faster than I can complete this huck embroidery monk's cloth Afghan. I don't know why. There's something about this technique that it takes me a long time. And also, it is quite tedious. Oh, almost skipped. Okay, so now I'm going to start the V-stitch. So I'm going to start with the slant stitch where I go up to the second one up, go through. But instead of going through all 4 of the next one, I split just the 2. And then I pull through. Okay, and I do suggest cutting your threads really, it'll suggest, depending on your pattern, how long you need to cut your threads. It is a factor of how long the length of your design is. So for this extreme peaks that I'm doing, it was 3 times the length of the overall Afghan is the length of the threads. So just to give you an idea of how much thread I have to pull through. So now to complete the tip of the V, we go through just this one here, which is already pulled up from the top V there. And I chose to do this dramatic V shape because it is the easiest design in the book. And I also thought it was very reminiscent of flames. But it does make it maybe slightly more boring to work on long distances. So now completing the V, we go down, we go back through, or not back through, but through the remaining 2 threads, and then over to the other vertical threads. Pull that through, all, I don't even know how long this is. For a 6 foot, I don't even think this is 6 foot, but for a 6 foot Afghan times 3 divided by 2, that'll give you the idea of how much you got to pull through every time, which if I was smarter, I would have thought about when I started the design. So here we're coming back down. Now we're doing the slant V down. So we go straight directly down from the one we ended on, 2 down, and then pull through. And that is honestly all of the stitches that this design takes. There are a couple of instances where I have straight stitches. So when on my next pass, I'll just go straight through these 2 and then keep doing the slant stitch down. So I only need to know 3 stitches. That's why it kind of gets pretty tedious doing a design like this, because I went with the straight peaks, which I thought were dramatic, simple, and very, very beautiful. But you can make it more complex, and I think that would make it more interesting to keep up for how much that this is going to take. And yeah, honestly, let's see, you can, with this size Afghan, I just am using 3 different colors. There's the straight orange, the straight red, and then the variegated for between the 2. I would say you only need 3 skeins of yarn. So for the red, this, and then 2, so one for the red, 1 for the orange, and then 2 for the variegated, just to be safe because of how much I'm doing. I purchased these a long time ago too. And it's just red heart yarn, so very affordable, very easy to pick up, and I think it's a really good starter kind of embroidery project. And I've seen a few different ways that people have finished these. They've done just the fringes on the ends, which another reason why I think I was going lengthwise, I could end with fringe. I've seen people kind of crochet a border, also a beautiful way to do it, or just like quilt it. I've seen people do a quilt kind of situation, a fleece background or backer, all sorts of things. That part gets completely creative, and I'll probably change my mind by the time I get done with this on how I want to do it. The important things is on the ends of the monk's cloth, you are going to need to form a hem so that you can not have it unravel too much, because again, it's a very loose fabric, a loose weave. And so I hand stitch just an easy, quick border hem on the two ends of the length. And then I just pull through my ends, and then I leave them long because I haven't quite decided what to do with them. They're not thick enough to do a natural fringe, but depending on how much yarn I have left over at the end, I might come back and add fringe to them. I also left a space here. I might do a back and then just fold over. I don't know. I've left it quite open to my interpretation. If I change my mind and I want to go all the way to the end, I do have quite a bit of lengths here that I could do that. But yeah, this is kind of how it looks on the end. You just pull it through, leave it long. They've never come back through. Yeah, there's not too much movement in the threads. So yeah, please let me know if you've heard about this, if you call it something else, if you've done a project of your own. I haven't honestly seen too much of this out in the wilds. I haven't seen a lot of people working on this. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody working on this actually. But I think it's really a really good project. It's not too hard on your hands. So if you're maybe having problems doing fine work, I think this is good for that kind of thing. If you still want to create something, but keep it loose and not too, what do I want to say, stressful on your joints. It's very interesting. And yeah, I hope to see a revival of it. I think it's easy to pick up. Let me know what you have thoughts on. Hope to see you again. Hope to be continuing to create videos here every 2 weeks. Maybe give progress. Hopefully one day you can see it finished. Okay. Well, thank you. Have a good week. Bye-bye.